I used to think the silence in my house was peace. It was a perfect, polished silence, the kind you see in magazines. But it was a lie. It was the silence of a held breath. The silence of a bird in a beautiful, gilded cage who has forgotten how to sing. I was the good wife, the woman who had everything. And every single day, I felt myself disappearing, shrinking into the beautiful beige walls of my perfect home, until all that was left was a ghost who knew how to make coffee and smile on cue.
That feeling of being invisible in your own life is a weight so many women carry in silence. Today, we're honored to share the story of a woman who found her voice in that silence. This is Maria Gonzalez's journey. From Florida, a story of breaking free from the cage of expectations. I'm your host, Susan Bentley, and this is Unbroken Women, where we celebrate the strength it takes to reclaim your spirit.
My life was a carefully curated collection of moments that looked perfect from the outside. The mornings smelled like freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon toast. I'd pack lunches for the kids, a little note tucked inside each one, and kiss my husband, Richard, goodbye as he left for his successful contracting business. Our house was immaculate, the lawn was always green, and on Sundays, we were in the front pew at church. I was the PTA mom, the one who baked for bake sales and volunteered for every field trip. It was my job, my identity. I was Mrs. Richard Gonzalez. And for a long time, I believed that was enough. It had to be. This was the life my mother and her mother before her had dreamed of for me. Security, a good provider, a respected family. I convinced myself that the little dreams I once had of maybe going back to school for landscape design, of traveling to see the monarch butterflies in Michoacan, were just childish fantasies. Silly things a woman puts away when she grows up and takes on her real responsibilities. So I tended to my home like it was a prize garden, making sure every petal was in place, ignoring the rot that was slowly spreading beneath the soil. It was easier that way. Richard never raised his voice. He never had to. His control was quieter, softer, and so much more insidious. It was in the way he'd comment on my dress. "Don't you think that's a little bright, honey? You look so much classier in neutrals." It was in the joint bank account that I never had the password to. He called it taking care of things, so I wouldn't have to worry. He'd hand me cash for groceries every week, like an allowance. My friends, they slowly drifted away after he'd make polite but pointed comments about them being a bad influence or too loud. He was protecting our family, he'd say. I felt it as a constant, low-humming anxiety, a tightness in my chest. I walked on eggshells, not because I feared an explosion, but because I feared his quiet disappointment. His disapproval felt like a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders, making me stoop, making me smaller. I was performing the role of the perfect, compliant wife, and the performance had become my entire reality. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at the grocery store, and I saw a woman, probably my age, laughing with a friend in the produce aisle. It was a loud, uninhibited laugh, the kind that makes your stomach hurt. She was wearing a brightly colored scarf and paint-splattered jeans. She looked so free. And in that moment, a thought, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through the fog. I don't laugh like that anymore. It was gone as quickly as it came, and I quickly pushed it down. Ashamed. What did I have to complain about? But the whisper had started. I'd find myself staring out the kitchen window, watching a hawk circle in the sky, and feel a desperate, aching envy for its freedom. I started having dreams where I was running, just running with no destination, my hair flying behind me, feeling the wind on my skin. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, the feeling of freedom so real, only to be crushed by the silent, orderly stillness of my bedroom. My younger sister, Elena, was turning 40. She's my soulmate, my other half, the one person who still saw the girl I used to be. She was having a huge party, a milestone celebration. For months, it was all we could talk about. I'd bought a new dress, a vibrant blue one, not a neutral beige, and hidden it in the back of my closet like contraband. I was alive with excitement. The night before the party, I was getting my things ready when Richard came into the bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed and said calmly, "I don't think you should go tomorrow." I just stared at him, confused. What? Why? It's Elena's birthday. He sighed, that patient, patronizing sigh of his. "I know, honey, but her husband's cousin, the one who drinks too much, he'll be there. And I don't like the way he looks at you. I just want to protect you. We can have Elena over for a quiet dinner next week. Just us." It was so absurd, so completely transparent that I actually laughed. And that was my mistake. His face hardened. The faux concern vanished. "You're not going, Maria. It's not appropriate. I'm your husband, and I'm saying no." He didn't yell. He just stated it as a fact, like announcing the sky was blue. In that moment, the entire artifice of his protection and love crumbled, and I saw it for what it was, a cage. My sister's birthday, this beautiful milestone of joy, was just another bar in the prison he had built around me. My first instinct was to bargain, to rationalize. I spent the next hour trying to convince him, and maybe myself, that he was wrong. "He's just worried," a voice in my head pleaded. "He loves you so much he gets jealous. It's romantic in a way." I tried to shrink the problem down into something manageable. Maybe if I promised to stay by my brother-in-law's side all night. Maybe if I wore something more demure. But he was a stone wall. He had made his decision. And then the fear set in. It was a cold, paralyzing wave that started in my stomach and spread through my entire body. What if I just went anyway? The thought was terrifying. The silent treatment that would follow, the weeks of suffocating disappointment, the way he would use it against me for months, maybe years. And what would people say? My family, his family? They all saw him as this perfect, doting husband. They'd see me as ungrateful, dramatic, a bad wife for defying him. The fear of their judgment was a physical thing, a hand squeezing my throat. It was easier to just comply. It was safer. So I retreated. I told myself it was just one party. It wasn't a big deal. I put the blue dress back in its hiding place and tried to breathe. The night of the party was the longest night of my life. Richard was in the living room watching TV, acting as if nothing was wrong. I sat in our bedroom, in the dark, my phone in my lap. Pictures started popping up on social media. My sister, radiant in a sparkling dress, surrounded by everyone I loved. My parents, my cousins, my best friends from high school. They were all there, laughing, dancing, celebrating. I could almost hear the music, feel the joy. And I was trapped, a prisoner in my own home just a few miles away. I sent Elena a text saying I had a terrible migraine, a lie that tasted like ash in my mouth. She called immediately, worried, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't trust my voice not to break. I just sat there staring at her smiling face on my screen, and something inside me shattered. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break. It was a deep, silent, internal collapse. A sob built in my chest so powerful it left me breathless. I curled into a ball on the floor, pressing my face into the carpet, and wept. I wept for the girl I used to be, for the woman I hadn't become, for the sister I was failing, and for the hollow shell I was now. In that moment, I knew this wasn't living, and I couldn't do it for one more day. After the tears, there was an eerie calm. The emotional storm had passed, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I looked around my beautifully decorated bedroom, at the expensive furniture and the perfectly coordinated throw pillows, and I felt nothing but disgust. It was a beautiful prison, but it was still a prison. The decision formed not in my head, but in my gut. It was a quiet, solemn vow. I am going to leave. The words didn't even have sound. They were just a solid, terrifying fact that settled in my soul. I knew what it meant. It meant disappointing everyone. It meant a brutal financial struggle. It meant turning my children's lives upside down. It meant facing the judgment of my community, my church, my own family. It felt like a betrayal of everything I had been taught to be. But the alternative, staying and letting my soul completely die, was no longer an option. The choice was between a terrifying unknown and a certain death of the spirit. I chose the unknown. My first step was tiny, secret, and felt like the most rebellious act of my life. The following Monday, after Richard left for work and the kids were at school, I went to the public library. Not our usual branch, but one in the next town over. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely use the computer mouse. I searched for divorce attorneys. The words looked scandalous on the screen. I felt like everyone in the library could see what I was doing, that I had bad wife tattooed on my forehead. I found a woman, a lawyer with a kind face on her website, and I wrote her number down on a scrap of paper from my purse. I went out to my car, my heart pounding in my ears. I sat there for 20 minutes, just staring at the number. Making that call felt like jumping off a cliff. But then I thought of the blue dress in my closet. I thought of my sister's face. I took a deep, shaky breath, and I dialed. Her assistant was kind. We made an appointment for a consultation. When I hung up, I felt a dizzying mix of terror and something else. A flicker. A tiny, unfamiliar flicker of power. The weeks that followed were a special kind of hell. I was living a double life, smiling and making dinner at home while secretly meeting with a lawyer and getting my documents in order. The guilt was eating me alive. Every time Richard was kind, every time he brought me flowers or complimented the meal, a voice screamed in my head, "You're a monster! He loves you! You're throwing it all away!" He could sense something was off, and his control tightened, disguised as affection. He started calling me multiple times a day just to check in. He'd question me about every minute I was out of the house. I finally confided in my mother, desperate for support. Her reaction broke my heart. "Ay, mija," she said, her face a mask of disappointment. "Marriage is hard. You have to work at it. You made a vow to God. Are you praying hard enough?" She meant well, but her words felt like another set of bars on the cage. She saw it as my failure, my lack of faith. Richard's mother was even worse. She told me I was being selfish, that I was thinking only of myself and not of what was best for the children. I felt utterly alone, navigating this treacherous new world with no map and no allies. The world I knew was actively trying to pull me back into my box. And some days, their voices were louder than my own. The loneliness was the worst part. At night, I lie awake next to a man who had become a stranger, a warden, and I'd be consumed by doubt. Was I making a catastrophic mistake? The fear of the future was a physical ache. How would I survive financially? Richard had always handled everything. The thought of paying bills, of finding a job, of being solely responsible for myself and the kids was overwhelming. I missed the simplicity of my old life, even the pain of it, because at least it was a familiar pain. This new path was just terrifying emptiness. I think about my children, about their sad, confused faces. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering that I was destroying their perfect life for my own selfish needs. There were so many moments when I just wanted to give up, to crawl back into the cage, because at least I knew the shape of it. The fight was so exhausting, and I didn't know if I had the strength to see it through. The floor fell out from under me the day he found the lawyer's card. I had foolishly left it in the pocket of a coat. He didn't yell. It was worse. He confronted me with a chilling calm, his eyes filled with a look of deep, wounded betrayal. And then he began his campaign. He told me that if I left, he would make sure I got nothing. He told me he would tell the children that I was abandoning them, that I had found someone else. He painted a picture of my future so bleak and lonely that I could barely breathe. "They'll hate you, Maria," he said, his voice soft and full of false pity. "You'll be all alone. Is that what you want?" He brought the kids in, had them tell me how much they loved our family, how much they loved him. It was masterful, cruel, emotional blackmail. I broke. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid to the floor, completely defeated. He was right. I couldn't do it. I couldn't lose my children. It was too high a price. I was ready to call the lawyer, to call it all off, to apologize and retreat back into the silence forever. I was packing away some old books to donate, part of my effort to fix things, to erase my rebellion. My hand brushed against a dusty paperback I hadn't seen in years. It was a self-help book I'd bought in my early 20s, full of cheesy but earnest advice. As I flipped through it, I saw my own handwriting in the margins, the younger, more hopeful version of me. My eyes landed on a passage I had fiercely underlined in pink highlighter. It said, "The fence that keeps others out also cages you in." And next to it, I had written, "My courage is my own." It was like a message from a ghost, from the woman I was supposed to become, the fierce girl who believed in herself, who wasn't afraid to take up space. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a tiny, warm spark in the absolute darkness. And in that moment, I knew his threats were just another fence, the most dangerous one yet. My courage was my own, and I had to find it again. That little spark changed everything. I started moving differently. My actions became small, quiet, but deliberate. I used the cash Richard gave me for groceries, but I bought generic brands and secretly stashed away the difference, $5, $10 at a time. It felt like a fortune. I got a secret part-time job, just 10 hours a week, shelving books at the very library where my journey began. My first paycheck was for $87. I held it in my hands and cried, not from sadness, but from a profound sense of accomplishment. It was mine. I joined an online support group for women in difficult marriages. Hearing their stories, sharing my own in the safety of anonymity, made me realize I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. These women became my lifeline. Slowly, painstakingly, I was building a raft, piece by piece, in the dark. It wasn't much, but it was enough to carry me to a new shore. I was learning to set boundaries in small ways, to say no to things, and, to my shock, the world didn't end. The day I had him served with divorce papers, I was terrified. But I was no longer fragile. He came home, his face a storm of rage and disbelief. He started to yell, to threaten, to blame, but this time I didn't shrink. I didn't cry. I stood my ground, looked him straight in the eye, and said, calmly and firmly, "We will discuss this through our lawyers, Richard." My voice didn't even shake. In that moment, I wasn't Mrs. Richard Gonzalez anymore. I was Maria. Just Maria. I felt a sense of peace wash over me that was so profound, it was almost holy. The cage door was open. The victory wasn't in the legal papers. It was in the unshakable stillness inside me. I was finally, truly my own. If I could speak to that woman, the one crying on the bedroom floor, I would wrap my arms around her. I would tell her, your goodness is not measured by your silence. Your worth is not defined by his approval. I tell her that real love is freedom, not control. Your courage is not just for your family, but for yourself. It's okay to be scared. Be scared and do it anyway. Break free, not because you are broken, but because your soul deserves to sing again.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing your incredible story of courage with us. Her journey reminds us that sometimes the bravest act is to reclaim the space that is rightfully yours. If Maria's story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Unbroken Women for more stories of resilience, and click here to watch another.